The drama around Pittsburgh Steelers winning or losing never seems to end. Welcome inside another edition of on Pittsburgh Sports Live, Pittsburgh Sports Now, Steelers Now, and all throughout the Now family of networks. I'm your host, as always, Mike Asti, and I am joined, as always, by Mike Vukovcan. We are going to talk Steelers on this show, and we're going to touch on some hot-button topics this past week after the Steelers lost to the Vegas Raiders. They're now 1-1. They enter another game at Heinz Field. I'll be there in attendance covering that one against the Cincinnati Bengals, who also are coming off a loss. Some think that's an easy game. Some think it's a throwaway game with a young quarterback, despite how well Burrow's playing. And some think Ben should just sit and rest, even if he can go. Ben obviously wants to play, but not fully healthy. A lot of his teammates are also not fully healthy. And we will touch on if this offense or team really even has a chance to get going if a few different pieces are not corrected, because Matt Canada has come under fire after only games as well. So, Mike, to get things started, and of course, Mic'd Up is presented by Martin Lawn Services at 412-849-5894. Ben Roethlisberger not healthy, wants to play, wants to start. Obviously a future Hall of Famer, not playing that great so far, not playing maybe as bad as some would have thought either, but certainly can't carry the team anymore. Offensive line is not that strong. There are other issues around this team. Some think you should just rest him, and that might actually be your best possible chance to have a successful overall season, because you get by the Bengals, or even if you don't, it would rest him for the rest of the year. But of course, nothing is guaranteed. They could easily lose to Cincinnati with or him.
Yeah, this is the NFL. This isn't college football where you have, you play patsies,
Right.
perceived patsies on your non-conference schedule. That's not the way it works. Every game you find out.
Right.
At the end of the year, you look back and you miss the playoffs by a game or something like that.
Which they did 2 years ago. They were
right,
out
exactly
2 years ago.
Yeah, you can never take that approach unless he is to the point of not being able to throw a football.
Sure.
Everybody in the NFL, for the most part, is going to be hurt. It's a contact sport. Those guys beat the hell out of each other every Sunday. It's barbaric. People are going to be hurt. There's a difference between hurt and injured.
Yeah.
And that's what they have to figure out with Ben is he capable of lining up under center and running their offense fully? If he is, and he's just going to be in discomfort, then he plays. That's why, he makes the money, and that's why he's a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Right.
However, if he's not, and you're going to have to limit what you do, and you're going to have to scale down an offense that isn't clicking to begin with, then it's something that you might have to take into consideration. But, I think Ben has to be honest with Tomlin. I think they have to, fully see what he can do. And if he can still go, then he goes. I don't put Mason Rudolph in there.
Right.
I'm not the biggest fan. I'm nothing personal against Mason. I just don't think he's a starting quarterback.
Right.
But he is a guy that has shown the ability to step in for a game or two and get the job done. So we're going to have to find out. I guess today will be a key day. Thursday is usually the day. Thursday and Fridays are the day that they're really going to get going in practice, and so we'll find out whether or not Ben's on the field today. If he isn't on the field today, then you might have to start going to Plan B, which is Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, and I believe he's supposed to speak to the media. So that could be whether he's on the field or not, but that'll be interesting. He'll get a lot of these questions. We'll get these answered on how he's feeling, whether he's on the field or not. Certainly that'll be very, very telling. I did go live this morning and see somebody in the chat saying they were a high school quarterback and would never play with a pec injury. Obviously, the NFL is a different level than high school. Obviously, this guy's dealt with tons of injuries over the years. And as you did put it, there's a difference between being hurt and being injured. But a pec injury is no small deal. That's certainly
not for a quarterback.
Yeah, not at all for a quarterback. That certainly could make it an issue in terms of throwing the football. And as you mentioned, he's already having doubters in terms of throwing the ball deep and how much he can push the ball downfield. Yes, Mason Rudolph, for me, is not your starter that I'd want to give the keys to the Cadillac either. Certainly not Dwayne Haskins either. Neither one has proven they can be a legit starter in this league. But Mason Rudolph has won games as a backup. He did play well last year. They have been able to win a couple games in a year with him. I'm sure re-signing him was part of thinking, well, Ben never really plays a full year. Honestly, he rarely does in his career. So Mason might have to play 1, 2, or 3. You hope it doesn't get to any more. But Mason's making big bucks too. He's a legit backup. QB2s in this league do play in the NFL, generally speaking. It is up to him now, several years in, having learned this offense, playing better last year, and winning the backup job in camp again over Haskins, that he should be able to get out there and run an offense, maybe not as good as Ben. But I think the most important part of this is anyone out there saying that because it's the Bengals versus, say, if this was against the Ravens, or say if this was against the Patriots or the Chiefs, or a legit team maybe in conference that you're worrying about vying for a wild card berth with, say the Chargers, etc., then maybe you would force Ben out there. But against the Bengals, who you always beat, who have a young QB who yet don't feel ready, maybe then you throw Mason. That's crazy. That none of these wins are guaranteed. They could easily lose to the Bengals with a healthy Ben Roethlisberger, the way they've been playing and this offense has been moving. So you can't throw games away. You do need all the games. Nothing is guaranteed in this league. The Bengals are by no means a team to sleep on. But if Ben is healthy enough to go, you use him. He is still better than anyone else you have. If he is not healthy to go, then you certainly don't risk him for the rest of the season, which you still have high hopes on. You do then have to not play him just because he then wouldn't be ready to go. But do you feel there's a difference of percentage, though? What if you're the coach and you're talking to Ben or you're talking to medical staff, they may, if somebody says, well, he can go, but he's going to be about 85% of what he normally is right now, which is already less than obviously him in his prime. Do you then consider Mason, or if Ben has the go-ahead from a doctor to play, then you'll play Ben? What does it have to be in terms of that situation?
I don't do anything with the percentages. I go by practice and whether or not
what you see,
whether or not he can make throws. If he's going to be relegated to checking everything down and everything being to where the Bengals pick up really quick, that this guy has no ability to throw down the field, then he doesn't play.
Right.
He has to be able to run their offense, meaning.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
If he can't do that, or he's going to further injure it, then he doesn't play.
Right.
But if he's just going to be in discomfort and he's able to, go down the field to Johnson if he plays, or play
a whole other
and all
thing.
that,
yeah.
Then I put him out there, and but my eye, as Mike Tomlin says, what's his phrase? My eyes will be the guide, or whatever.
Yeah.
I see it in practice. If he's making throws down the field, then 7's a go. If he's not, then you go with Rudolph. And the biggest thing to this game, though, too, Mike, is I think it was encouraging that Watt yesterday was practice had limited. He was on the field at least. Joe Hayden was a full.
Yeah, there's a lot of other injuries besides.
Yeah,
Devin Bush was out on the field. Yeah,
those are a big factor on defense. It was discouraging to see Alex Highsmith sat out again with a groin.
Right.
Hopefully he's back. I'm going to be encouraged, or I'm going to be anxious to see the practice report today and see who goes out there.
Right.
So I think that's as big. I know quarterback is going to get all the play as far as the attention goes.
Sure.
But my eyes are going to be on that defense and who's able to go out there on defense, because if you're missing 3 or 4 guys on defense, it might not matter if Ben is on the field or not.
Absolutely. And I think another reason why you really focusing on those defenders, Joe Burrow's been very good since he started his NFL career, but this is kind of that game that you're feeling like if you have the Steelers' full defense out there, they could get him to make some mistakes. They could get in a young quarterback's face. They could really rush the passer. If you're losing linebackers, if you're losing corners, he could pick you apart. He's been that good so far, and that could really pose a problem because the Steelers are coming off a loss to the Raiders where they had the full group offensively, even though it couldn't get going, and then the defense played well. It's not their fault they lost, but they didn't get those takeaways. They weren't able to steal the game. Not that they should have to, but this feels like a game that if Ben isn't out there, if the offense can't get going again, maybe the defense could steal. And again, as another chatter told us, you do have that Green Bay game looming. The Packers now look like they're finally clicking. Aaron Rodgers is a younger Hall of Fame quarterback that despite their drama, they should be able to at least move the ball. You want to have your full defensive group out there with great quarterbacks coming up, including one this Sunday against Joe Burrow. Now, Mike, what I do want to pivot to is obviously the Steelers have tons of injuries. They need to be as healthy as possible, and that does go beyond Ben. That Devin Bush also was out there. That's a big
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, we haven't seen him in it feels like forever, but it's about a year. So he needs to be out there too. But regardless of who is the quarterback, and certainly Ben Roethlisberger is the best you have for sure, even in his age. He's certainly better than Haskins and Rudolph now. Neither one of them have proven to be a starter, if a backup. But if not Ben, you go to Mason, and if Mason somehow gets injured or falters, then maybe you go to Haskins and give him another shot. Regardless of who's the QB, though, and even regardless of who's out there, because Deontay Johnson is a question mark with his health, does this offense have a chance to get going and be able to run what Matt Canada wants to run, since he's already now facing criticism? Some fans ridiculously are already out on this man after he had so much hype and so much love getting this job after being the QB coach last year. Does any of that have a chance if the offensive line does not improve and play better? And it doesn't appear there's anything going to be bolstered to that O-line. We're still a week or so away from Zach Banner. Najee Harris still hasn't been able to get going. You once again could point to the offensive line. Is all of this for naught? Is it time to reevaluate Matt Canada as an offensive coordinator in terms of play calling, or is the offensive line just holding back this team?
Well, yeah, to this point, maturity, days in the system, days of practice is the only thing that is going to hopefully get this team better. You know, it cracks me up that people I read, they haven't invested in the offensive line and all this stuff, or they haven't looked into. What are you talking about? They just drafted a left tackle.
Right. They had a guy retire.
Yeah, they have a center that's a rookie.
Right.
They have a left guard that's a second-year player.
Right.
Unfortunately for the Steelers, they had two Hall of Fame type players retire in the same year.
Yeah, that's big. That's really not a small deal with a new
offense. Yeah, exactly. You know, not too many teams are going to withstand that. And they tried to fix it. The only problem is these guys need more. They need more birthdays. They need to get older. They need to move the system.
Right.
That's what's holding them back. So hopefully, and the other thing too is they've played two pretty good. I know people don't want to hear this, but
they have.
Another thing that's going to maybe dictate as to whether or how good the offense gets going here is the defenses they're going to be playing. They've played two pretty good defenses so far. The Buffalo Bills, and the Oakland Raiders have a really good front defensive line.
Yeah,
that plays into it as well.
Yeah,
this week things are going to you would imagine this is the weakest of the three teams that they've played to this point. So I would assume they'll look a little better. How much better? Good enough to win? We don't know.
Right.
But this is by far the quote weakest defense they've played so far, and I think that'll play in. So you got to just give these guys time. You also remember too, Mike, that as we talked about it a lot, these guys didn't have a lot of time in training camp either.
Sure, yeah.
In exhibition, it was well chronicled that these guys didn't play a lot of games together. So they're finally starting to do that. Unfortunately, it's in the regular season. It would have been nice to have been able to do that in the exhibition season, but some of these guys were banged up and they weren't able to go. So all that plays into it. I know people want instant gratification and fire this guy and
It's 2 games in. Yeah.
It's 2 games in. As far as the Matt Canada talk, that's just stupidity. If it's brought up by the media, I don't know who's bringing it up, but if it's talk show hosts or people that are saying that, that's just clickbait material. And people
it's in the same vein with they're going to sign Cam Newton, because they're just not going to sign Cam Newton. So it's in that same
exactly
family of conversation.
Yeah, that's just stupidity talk, and get people to talk and get your stuff on Twitter or whatever.
Right.
But Matt Canada's fine. He'll be fine once he has the proper people to coach and guys that are fully ready to play in the NFL. So hopefully, for the Steelers' sake, that's soon.
Yeah, and I think Matt Canada will be fine too. The only way Matt Canada would not be fine is if he is hampered by never having a crew, or certainly not this year, because you're dealing with tons of injuries. Ben Roethlisberger is already a question mark. This is a new offense that Ben had to learn. There was adjustments to be made. Just because he was great in the preseason did not mean he would immediately learn it and be great again in the regular season. You have injuries all around. Eric Ebron's been hurt. Matt Canada had said prior he likes to have multiple tight ends. And what does Matt Canada's offense really rely on? He said this, and we know this from college. He needs blocking, and they're not getting the blocking, but it's not necessarily that Kevin Colbert didn't try to do anything. Again, as you mentioned, they had a borderline Hall of Fame center retire, who I guarantee Ben would love to have this year while he learns a new offense and gets a new group together. They had veterans leave this offensive line.
David DeCastro
is another one. And and you could even, honestly, as many as people make fun of him and make all the jokes, and he's not been good with Baltimore either, but Alejandro Villanueva had been a veteran for years. The difference is Ben had continuity. These guys learned the plays. Even if Villanueva's not as good as he was, he at least learned the plays. You don't have to take a week or two to learn plays. That is the case with this offensive line group. When Chuck Okorafor is maybe your veteran leader who you want to look to, you got some problems on the O-line. And Zach Banner, who is supposed to be your veteran leader, who you did pay, and he won a job last year, we have not seen still on the field in about a calendar year. So a lot of this has not been luck for the Steelers. They have certainly been very unlucky when it comes to the O-line. And if the offensive line is not blocking, it doesn't matter who you have as your offensive coordinator. Bill Walsh could be calling plays out here. Yeah. You're not going to get anything to move. So it's certainly going to be hampering things. They do have an opportunity now with a defense who is a little bit weaker than what they have had. And it borderline is a must-win game because you have Green Bay coming up. You have a schedule being harder. If Ben can go, he got to play, but it's going to be harder, obviously, unless they can get healthier. And the offensive line does certainly have to play better. I don't even think Najee Harris deserves any criticism either a couple games in, because he can't do anything if he doesn't get blocking, even as much as he says he can make up for the holes. No one can, and if you do, you're going to get killed.
One thing that can help the offense is
we will see.
Hopefully, although they've played well to this point, they've played above the line.
Sure.
It'd be nice if the defense helps the offense out with some turnovers.
And we talked about
that. It gives them a short field, and they don't have to drive. Although they, it's their job to do so. Right. It'd be nice if they don't have to drive 70, 80, yards for a touchdown. Give them get a turnover, in the opposing zone, and give them a short field to work with, and make their job a little easier. It goes hand in hand sometimes. They need some breaks, and they've played well, but they haven't necessarily, I think TJ Watt maybe created one in the first game, but aside from that, defense needs to help them out a little bit while the offense is struggling.
Exactly. And that's how the defense led the Steelers to almost the playoffs 2 years ago without Ben Roethlisberger. Maybe you don't expect them to get 2-3 turnovers a game like that record-setting clip they were on at that point. But part of the loss to the Raiders, they didn't have a defensive turnover. That's indifferent to what they had against the Bills, that you can't put all the pressure on, oh my God, you got to get these turnovers or you're not going to have a chance. You don't want to tell the defense they have to carry the load. But when your quarterback is aging, is hurt, your receiver is hurt, who's emerging as your number one in Deontay Johnson, your offensive line is weaker and still hurt and trying to learn, you do need picked up a little bit from the defense. The field position being minimal certainly would help. Special teams would help, getting some solid returns that haven't really been there in a year or so. all of that would help the offense, especially if Ben isn't in there, of course. But even if he is, yeah, they do need to turn the ball over a little bit. And that goes back to what you said to open up the show here as we close up shop, that maybe those defensive players are more important than even Ben for this game, because you need them healthy, because the ones you mentioned in Hayden, TJ Watt, Devin Bush, Highsmith, etc., those are the ones that we always hear their names along with Minka that create turnovers. If they're not there, or even if one or two of them's not there, that will take away the opportunity for turnovers, which this offense desperately needs. That's why this is a team sport.
Joe Hayden's going to be a big one to get back in. They
Right.
need him back this week,
Big
just
play,
because
Joe.
he would match up. He would match up with T. Higgins,
Right.
a guy, a big physical receiver that can get down the field. That's one I was glad to see that he
Right.
was a full participant yesterday. So they need him in there to match. He's the guy that they I would imagine that they have set up for
Right.
Higgins, but then they also have Jamar Chase, their first round pick, who can get down the field, and slot receiver Tyler Boyd.
Sure.
So Cam Sutton, I'm sure, will match up with him. So it'll be an interesting matchup. But the thing that could derail Joe Burrow a little bit, and like happened last week when he was sacked 4 or 5 times and he had 3 interceptions, you got to get pressure on him. You get pressure on him. It's not as easy. So that's why these defenders need to get back.
The Steelers historically feast on younger QBs. I think the world of Joe Burrow. I do think he's the future of their franchise. I do think he's going to be good. He's been good mostly in his NFL career, but he's been prone to turnovers like young QBs are, and that defense could create some of those turnovers, which could help the Steelers win this game regardless of what the offense does. The keys to the game, again, as you said, it's about getting the defense pressure, creating some turnovers, really getting into Burrow, making it a tough day for him, making him beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then obviously the offense doing just enough. That'll do it for this edition of the show. Obviously, check into Steelers Now for our coverage of practice today, who is out there, what they say. We'll have those videos on Pittsburgh Sports Live, and then, of course, the game coverage over there at Steelers Now this weekend, and, of course, Pittsburgh Sports Now on all our college sites as well, as those teams are ramping up for another week of college football as well. For Mike Vukovcan, for all of us at Pittsburgh Sports Live, PSN, and Steelers Now, that'll do it for this Thursday edition of the show. Now fully into fall, I'm Mike Asti, and that was Mic'd Up, presented by